Hi everybody, welcome to this short masterclass in Christmas activities, and I'm really excited that I am today talking to Caroline Benham, who is CEO of Bright Copper Kettles, and we will provide you with a link to the website at the end of this recording. Hi Caroline, how are you?
Hi Jane, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Great, good, thanks. Yeah, thanks for joining us. So I wondered if we could kick off with you telling me a bit about Bright Copper Kettles. What do you do and how have things changed during the pandemic for you?
Okay, well, Bright Copper Kettles is a community interest company. It wasn't always a business. I set it up actually in my own time when I was an activity coordinator to put together all the different resources that I could find to help other activity coordinators who often struggle to get hold of all that information. And then it was only really a few years ago I needed to make it actually work for me so that I could keep going with it, and it needed to be able to pay for itself. So we set up membership, and yes, we have courses as well, and the main website actually has a directory for different resources, including entertainers, care home entertainers, who obviously have been really hit quite hard at the moment. We've been trying to support them as much as we can. Lots have gone on to giving online performances, which is helpful for care homes. But others are really struggling because they're not tech-minded and can't really see their way out of it. Yeah, the membership runs, so you can join monthly or annually, but it includes the course of how to plan care home activities and 12 months of ideas, really going through the different months using special dates and the seasons to help with care home planning, activities planning.
Brilliant. Sounds great. So Caroline, what do you think are the barriers to kind of planning activities for Christmas this year?
Well, specifically this year, obviously it's keeping everything clean and as safe as possible. And each care home really is faced with their own barriers. So activity coordinators really need to discuss with care home managers of what the guidelines are that they've got coming through to them. There has been talk recently of letters going out from the local authorities about no Christmas decorations going up. I have yet to see any evidence of it. So at the moment, I'm declaring it a hoax. I think somebody has written in scaremongering, and somebody's jumped on it. And even people that I have always thought of as being trustworthy sources, and I still do, but I think they've been hoodwinked into this happening. And I actually don't, I really don't think there's any evidence there at the moment. I've been trying for the last 4 days to find some evidence. And obviously it's really upsetting for care home managers to hear things like that, for activity coordinators. Nobody knows really where to start with their planning for Christmas decorations, because nobody wants to spend hours planning it, and nobody wants to spend hours with the residents actually making items which aren't going to be able to go up. You know, nobody wants to spend hours putting decorations up which they've later got to take down. So I think that's one of the main issues at the moment, is trying to source out what they are allowed to do and what they aren't allowed to do. And my thoughts on it is just go as normal, but with extra due care and attention to the risk assessments, which should be happening anyway on a daily basis. Christmas is usually busier with things like that, but you know, the care home should be aware of all the risk assessments. They should have risk assessments that they can look at that they've done before. I'm sure many of them have had situations where they've had similar problems that they've had to deal with in the past, even over Christmas. So that would be the first barrier. It really is, I would say, ignore it to a certain extent, but just be as careful as you can.
Yeah.
But that goes without saying anyway, really. We do need to be careful with what we're doing. The second barrier that I find is that lots of activity coordinators aren't really aware of the beliefs and thoughts around Christmas of their residents. So Jehovah's Witnesses, and other people that, you know, just really don't want to celebrate Christmas, and being aware of that, but still giving a Christmas atmosphere for the people who want to celebrate Christmas. And again, that depends on your care home setting. So, you know, if it's a care home that is solely for people who are Jehovah's Witnesses, for instance, then they will know what they're doing. But remembering that people who are in care homes where they are maybe in the minority are, you know, they're adults. They've gone through the whole of their life with other people celebrating around them, and they know what their boundaries are. And the idea really is to find out from them what their boundaries are, what they want to get involved in and what they don't want to get involved in, and working around it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, and one that you're right, it's about having those conversations, isn't it? And knowing your residents and knowing what their kind of needs are and their preferences, and then working on that. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and if they're not able to express that, then usually there are members of their families that are able to explain, you know, how things have been done in the past, and, you know, finding out perhaps if they've got a different interest that they would like to be spending their time on Christmas Day, so that they're not in the midst of Christmas celebrations as such, and arranging things that are, you know, look, I know a lot of people complain that we're losing Christmas and it's becoming a winter celebration and what have you, but having enough of that seasonal celebration, that, you know, they can still feel that it is a special time of year without the Christmas element, I think is still important, and makes it possible for everybody to be involved.
Brilliant. Yeah, really good thinking. So how might providers involve family, friends, relatives a bit more this year, given that, you know, it's very difficult with the visiting, and previously they might have been in and out for parties and events and social, and that's not going to happen this year. So have you got any thoughts about how they can involve them more?
It is really tricky, and it really depends again on the family setup or friends of the people, the residents that we're trying to support, because, you know, it's easy to say, oh, can we organise a Zoom meeting so that residents can see their families? You know, they could even sit with the tablets on the tables, you know, where people are actually sitting and eating together. But it all depends on, you know, who they've got involved, and remembering that actually their Christmas tables aren't going to be the same either. The families aren't always going to be, they're not all going to be able to get together, where they've got grown-up children and grandchildren that would normally be there, who would normally go and visit the care homes. That's not the situation either. So I don't really know. I don't really have the answer to that, Jane, because it is going to be very individual. I think it would be really nice to try and make some time for everybody to have some kind of live connection with their families, of one sort or another. And that's going to take some planning beforehand, and organising times, and organising staff for the day to make sure that there are people that, you know, that it's not just down to the activity coordinator, which very often happens, and makes life impossible, because if you've got one activity coordinator who's trying to do something one-to-one with, you know, 60 residents in some cases, it's just not going to happen, especially not all in one day. So yeah, it's really a case of looking inwards and finding out what resources you've got and what's available. I've lost your sound, Jane.
I was on mute. I imagine having those conversations with family members and friends and relatives is probably the first step, isn't it? In
Yeah.
You know, what could they bring to the table? Have they got any suggestions? You know,
exactly.
That they think, you know, mum or dad or son or daughter would love to do. So yeah.
And it's about remembering as well that Christmas isn't just that one day, you know, and for many of the older residents in care homes, they don't necessarily see their family on that day anyway. So we could spread it across, you know, over a week even, but certainly Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, they're all important days really to try and make that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you got any kind of top tips for activities or suggestions or things that people could start thinking about now? I suppose we're heading towards the beginning of December.
Yeah. Well, we've got Stir Up Sunday coming this Sunday, which traditionally is the day where the Christmas pudding is made. So having those ingredients available, measuring them out, weighing them, and stirring them into a bowl are all good things where we're going to get the lovely smells of the different spices and things that we're putting in, and talking about how they may have shared that experience with their families in the past. I still remember at school being asked to go through to the canteen to stir the Christmas pudding, and I was really excited. So you know, these memories do stick. And finding out, did they put things in the Christmas pudding? Because we did when we were children. We'd have the silver sixpence, and you know, I don't recommend putting things like that in the Christmas pudding. Please don't. But actually having them out on a tray and discussing, you know, what those different items were or for different people, and what they represented is all good conversation pieces. And then the following Sunday, on the 29th, we've got Advent Sunday, the first Sunday in Advent, which again is a time when we're talking about the approach of Christmas. Great time to start talking about Advent calendars, although it's not quite to the day, but it works out that the date works quite nicely to flow that in, and creating some Advent calendars. Perhaps, you know, people might like to make some with matchboxes, or, you know, if you can get the wooden ones that people could paint and decorate, and think about things that they might like to put in the little drawers, because some of them have drawers or little pockets and things like that. And wreaths as well. Traditionally, the wreath would go up on the doors on the first day of Advent. So making those, and I really think, you know, I've seen quite a few people have put their personal Christmas decorations up already. But we do need to be mindful that there are lots of residents who will still want their Christmas decorations up but you know, to take down on the 5th of January. It's a heck of a long time to have Christmas decorations up, especially if, as at the moment, you know, we're being advised that, you know, maybe baubles need to be cleaned, and people are making decorations that are laminated. A lot of people have been creating things that are flat and can be laminated so that it's easy to clean. But, you know, we don't want to be cleaning from now until January.
Really good point.
Yeah, so you know, don't be too hasty with getting all the decorations up. And the other point about that is that, you know, quite a lot of people go all in with all the decorations, and they all go all up at the same time. And, you know, some people may not have come out of their rooms during that time, and to come out of your bedroom and find, you know, a whole feast of decorations everywhere can be quite a shock. And it, you know, it looks like a different place. I think it could be quite unsettling for some people. to find that going on. And the fact that they then realise that they've not been involved in it.
Yeah.
Because they weren't up and about.
That's a really good point. I hadn't considered that before.
Yeah, well, I just think, you know, we have to be mindful that it is their home.
Yeah.
And, you know, giving them things to prepare for Christmas and prepare for putting the Christmas decorations up is just as important, if not more important, than actually having the Christmas decorations up. You know, for instance, having things like the Christmas lights. If you can get hold of the old-fashioned lights and give somebody a string of those and have them so that they can keep plugging them in and switching them on to check to see if they're all working. I mean, that's a tradition for many people to go through, and you're twisting all the little bulbs and it's not that one, and it's not that one, and you know, and swapping them out. You have spare bulbs and you're switching them in and out, and you know, that's all part and parcel of preparations for Christmas.
Absolutely. It was blue in our house when that had to take place.
But for the gentlemen as well, that's something that very often they would have been asked to do. And you know, I get asked so many times, you know, what can I give my gentlemen to do? Well, think about the type of things that they traditionally would have done. And I think the younger generation who are now working in care homes probably find that quite difficult to understand, that you know, this gender difference was much more present in the lives of those older people, and just totally accepted. It wasn't something, you know, there were obviously some people who didn't want to be treated in a certain way, but generally it was accepted that women did this and men did that. You know, the women would clean the table and wash the clothes, and the men would polish the shoes on a Sunday night, ready for everybody else in the family to go out on Monday with clean, polished shoes. You know, everybody had their role. And I think the younger generation of people working in care homes now haven't experienced that from their parents even. Because we share the roles now. Everybody works.
That's a really good point. And those roles are really marked at Christmas. You're right. There was definitely jobs in our house that Dad did and jobs that Mum did. So
Yes. And I think that's, you know, find out what they remember about doing. You know, what did they have to do, and work with that. And you know, sometimes it's even going through the actions of doing something that they really didn't like doing at Christmas, just for the laugh of it, because they would say, oh, I used to hate doing this.
Yeah, good one. So my final question to you then, Caroline, is how can providers, managers, coordinators record and evidence some of this really great activity that takes place in a meaningful way, not in a bureaucratic way, but in a way that, you know, it helps them to evidence what they've been doing, but shows those outcomes, those positive outcomes?
Yeah, I think where people are actually creating something, it's easier, isn't it? Because you can take photographs of people, and you know, people say taking photographs is not a way of recording things for CQC or what have you. It is actually. There's nothing more telling than, you know, the number of photographs you've got of a person. It's no good having, you know, you could have lots of photographs of people being involved in things, but if it's the same person or the same few people in all of those photographs, that tells you something. That tells you that, you know, either nothing's happening with the other people that, you know, can be evidence, or, you know, you feel that what they're doing isn't valuable.
Yeah.
And either way, you need to question yourself of, you know, why isn't this happening? So it really doesn't matter if it's just the photograph of the person on the day, and they might be holding a flower, you know, where you've been talking about the petals of the flower or smelling the flower, or, you know, something really, really simple with somebody who has dementia. Photographic evidence of that. So you've got your photograph of your person, you know, maybe putting the rose right up to their faces, which often happens, and the smiles on their faces that you can capture, and then writing with that photograph what it is, and sharing that with families as well, particularly this time of the year with the problems that we're having. Sharing photographs of what you're doing and photographs of certain members of staff sitting with the residents, creating an area where you've got almost a photo booth type thing, really, you know, the Christmas displays, and everybody taking turns sitting in the Christmas display and having their photographs taken. You know, it's all good fun,
yeah.
But taking the photographs and then using those as prompts as well to write down what the people have been involved in is a really good way of evidencing things.
That's a great
and I think what we should be aiming for really is to have more visual evidence of what's happening.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think those photographs are great memories for everybody, aren't they? Not just residents and the staff, so like you say, for family members. So that's great advice.
And again, for actually bringing in when you're doing repeated activities, you can go back to the photographs that you had before. Oh, do you remember we had this? Or, oh wow, I've forgotten we'd got that, and you know, oh, we ought to do that again, and you know what fun it was, and you know, getting those discussions flowing again. And it's a really good way as well of actually including people who don't get involved in activities. Because if you've got a member of staff who's got a selection of photographs in their pocket and they go into somebody's room and somebody who says, no, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that every time, you know, they can go in and say, I've got to show you this photograph, look at this is hilarious. And just show them. And it could be a member of staff even, it doesn't have to be another resident, it could be a member of staff doing something really silly and saying, look, this is Sally that you saw this morning, how sensible she was this morning, look at this, managed to capture, you know, and bringing that smile. And then they might ask, what were they doing, you know, how did that photograph come about, you know, why was she dressed as a chicken or whatever. You know, it's just like and getting those conversations going can then make them think, oh, actually, and they pick their interest into what is happening outside their door.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, thanks so much, Caroline. That has been incredibly enlightening for me, and it's put a massive smile on my face because, you know, I love Christmas and I love activities, and I think it's the one thing that we can do to bring joy into what is a very difficult situation at the moment, and you know, is causing a lot of anxiety and upset. So it's a really important topic, and thank you so much for sharing your ideas and your thoughts. It's definitely going to be really valuable.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for inviting me, Jane. It's
Thanks, Caroline.
Really good. Thank you.
And there'll be a link to Caroline's website, Bright Copper Kettles CIC, and so you'll be able to go across there and find out lots more about what Caroline does and the resources and support that she provides. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. See you next time.